Spontaneous for sure. We are eternal.
Hey, Composing Gloves here, and this is a gigantic Edison. Today we're going to be talking about NuTone Part 2 in the FL12 Effects series in this like little mini part series. There's only going to be 3 parts. I originally anticipated there being more, but I'm going to do a whole separate vocal processing video for this. So in the first video, I kind of went actually a bit more in depth than I had anticipated going. I just sort of went with the flow of what was going on. And in this video, we are going to talk about what all the little buttons and knobs and everything do. And I'll give short examples of what they do as we do it. I'm not going to be doing a constructive edit. Instead, I will do that in a part 3 video, and I'm going to call it good. And I'm going to have a whole separate series just for vocal processing because it is quite the art. So in the other one, I'll edit a vocal, and we're going to do something similar to what I have right here. So let's get rid of these. Actually, we're going to make this. I'm actually recording this after I've done the third video because I forgot I went over 30 minutes, and this time I'm going to attempt to not go over 30 minutes. So we're going to make this in the part 3 video.
You will subscribe to this channel. You will subscribe to this channel.
Which is actually different than the one we did up here, so you'll see a bit about that. And that click at the beginning is taken care of by this. So no more click. I do that. I do literally all this, so you'll see exactly how I did that in that video. And I talk over a bit about how to just do the stuff I'm going to show you how to do here. So let's talk about the controls. First order of business is getting NuTone to work with FL and play in sync the way you desire, because if it doesn't, then your life just sucks and it's no fun and it's just terrible. You won't even want to use NuTone. I used to edit a vocal in here completely out of sync. I'd use NuTone separately, sort of have a vision of what I wanted it to sound like, and sort of sometimes I'd be guessing at notes. Back in the old days, you just wrote notes on paper and that was just how you did things. But I would do that, and then I would bounce it, and then if it wasn't something I liked, I'd go back in and make some changes and do it again and again and again. And it was just horrible. So now I just do this, and it is great. I just have it play in sync with what I want. So the way you do this is, right now, these two things are separate. And if you're wondering how this window is floating, detached will make Windows recognize NuTone as its own separate window. So that's the thing. So we go over here, and you hit play, and it plays our song. I'm going to actually mute that for now. But it does not play in NuTone. NuTone plays separate. So if we put a cursor down and push play, it plays separate. Well, if we hit this slave button, this little chain button right here, it will play with FL Studios. Now, the way it's been set up right now is when I go to like bar 2, that is bar 2 in NuTone, or bar 3 or bar 4. And this may not always be something you want. Maybe you could just select your vocal and move it over so that it recognizes it. But let's say you want it to play along with a specific part of your song, and you have it set up in such and such a way, and you need to get it synced up. Well, and if that's the case, because right now if we push play, as you see, it is slaved. And right now, I happen to record it like that, so it actually works out fine. But if we were to right-click, ignore host selection, now what will happen is whenever I select an area, the beginning of my selection will be recognized as bar 1 by NuTone. So if we push play, as you see, it started at bar 2. Bar 1 is right there. We push play, it starts at bar 1. And you can then delete whatever's at the beginning, and then just grab your stuff and move it over. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to go to the other mode. Another thing is, let's say you've selected something. Oh, just so you know, this will always be a scrubber tool, so you can hear whatever you're messing with. So if you hold down Control and drag, you can select an area of time, which can also be done by going into your time selection over here. And let's say like, oh, but you want to go past that. As you can see, we're past our selection point. We're past that on here. So in order to do this, in order to have it play without recognizing the selection in NuTone, only recognizing the selection in your playlist in FL Studios, what you have to do is you right click, ignore own selection. So now it will just play right through that selection as if it's not there. Sometimes you may want to select areas of time for specific editing. You know, it's totally up to you. So I'm just going to undo that just because I'm probably not going to use that. And this last one is ignore spacebar key. So if this is off and we hit play, Newtone's running all on its own, even though it'll still sync up with FL Studio. But you have to hit play in FL Studio for it to work inside in the playlist. So in order to avoid this, because half the time, well, 90% of the time, you're not going to want this, you just go to ignore spacebar key, and when you hit spacebar in Newtone, it will tell FL Studios to play as well.
You will subscribe.
And you can see it's playing. And let's just do that.
You will subscribe.
So that's the thing. And once again, I have this problem with selections that I only have problems with when I'm recording. Anyways, oh, there it goes. All right. So let's talk about manipulating these notes. So we talked about last time, we have, if we uncenter this and move, oh, quick note. This is something I've never rated in a manual. I just happened to just come across this. If you hold down Alt and left click, oh, it's Control and left click, it will take you to see your entire view like that. The playlist window does something similar, except for it zooms to where it perfectly fits your view. This one just takes you to see the entire view. So if you zoom in, if you hold down Control and scroll your mouse wheel, you zoom in and out. If you hold down Alt and scroll your mouse wheel, you zoom up and down. If you hold down Alt and zoom on top of while your mouse is over a waveform, it zooms the waveform in and out, but it does not change the volume. It just zooms the visual so you can see it. Maybe it's really soft, like over here, and you want to see that better. You can scroll things. But if you're not on it, you scroll, you move up and down. So that could be another thing that's just useful. If you select multiple notes by clicking and dragging, hold down Alt and scroll, it does not scroll them. Well, I anticipated it would. So that's the thing. But if you hold down Alt and right click, Control and right click, it takes you out to see the whole thing. That is just, that blew me away. All right, so moving on. So we talked about what this line is. That's the actual pitch. And we have here the note. And the actual note is in orange, the note that it was closest to. So here's one. So this note is actually off from what Newtone, bless me, but Newtone thinks it should be. So to fix that, you go to center, and it will, now it's important to note that this is a per cut basis. So it takes all the samples inside here. If you're not familiar with samples and basic DSP stuff like that, go check out my basic DSP series, DSP Basics or something like that, and it will cover that. I think it's like the third video. And so, yeah, and when you make cuts, it may recalibrate where the center is, where the nearest pitch is, based on the average of all your samples in a slice. So this is considered a slice. I call them notes sometimes. So if you hear me say notes, I'm referring to slices. So center will remove, so you can see things just shifted a little bit. Over here will be much more noticeable. This will move to the detected pitch, and this even moves a little bit too. So that's that. Now here, I must give you a word of caution. You must use your ears. So you're going to see these graphics with these lines going down and up and all over the map. And this is fine, but you have to use your ears. This is just a guide to tell you where things might sound funky. Some people make edits without listening to them first, and this is like, they're not audio engineers because they're visual engineers now. Like that's not how you edit things. So you like here, oh, that looks kind of funky. This looks like I might be out of key. I'm going to listen to it and see if that's true. And so you listen to it. And you'd be like, oh yeah, there is something a little funky right here, but it's not necessarily this curve. It's just really sudden. And so you can then make the change that you got from listening to it. The visuals are only here to help you make judgments on if it looks funny, then you might start changing things around. So do not become dependent on visuals. Use your ears. I cannot say this enough. This is a thing that a lot of new people, they just fall into this trap, because sometimes the visuals just end up looking really weird, and it's not even like, it doesn't even sound weird at all. So you gotta use your ears. Another thing people do is they'll use the center thing like nobody's business. There are some genres of music where turning on your center all the way isn't something you want to do. Like there are occasions where you don't want to do that. Use your ears. Listen to your sample first and after, and decide whether or not that's a thing. Maybe some notes you'll want slightly off. So there are some people who just do this. They'll say, that's the first thing I do, like no matter what. And to them, I say, well, then you're making blind moves that you have made. That's a bad move. That's stupid. That's total dogma right there. So don't go for this thing immediately. As for what I'm going to do right now, I like that. I've listened to it. I know what I want, and I want that. I might not want it all the way there. And if you want to change the pitch slightly, because if you go to the middle of the note, you'll get this up and down arrow. So you can drag your notes up and down, but you may not want it quite on the note like that. Maybe it's a bend or something, and your edits have sort of messed with it in a way you don't like, and you'd like to move it back, but keep some of the products of what the edit did. You're going to hold down Alt and move. Let me scroll up. It might be Control. Control Alt. I know it's one of these. Let me turn my center off. So your center can't be on. That's what it was. So when your center's on, it's going to always resample it and center it. So that's another reason why you might not want to use center, is it takes away your advantage of being able to manipulate notes like that. So if you turn your center slightly off, you can move in between pitches. But when it's all the way up, you can't do that. So, and you hold down Alt to do that. I was right. I was just a little confused. I'm like, why isn't it moving? And now I know. So yeah, you move to the middle of the note, and you immediately get this up and down arrow. Now, there's a few different modes here. Here, I'm kind of paranoid right now, so I'm going to come over here and change this to forever, just in case, because this is like the third time I've done this. So there's a few different ways. Now, if you're familiar with Elastic Audio in Pro Tools, this is basically how you do Elastic Audio in FL Studio. Now, some people would say, oh, I have to open up a plugin and get to it. Yeah, this is the best way you can do it in FL Studio. Pro Tools, you record audio onto a track, and then you can manipulate the audio in there. And FL could set that up, but you'd have to dedicate a track on your playlist. This is an object-oriented programming thing where you drag patterns in, and you can have all these MIDI lines on one track. You can't do that in Pro Tools. I way prefer this for this kind of stuff. So you're going to have to come in here, and now you're probably wondering, like, what the crap is Elastic Audio? Elastic Audio is, let's say you have a guitar player who strums, but his strumming is just barely off, but you need to move. You wish you could change this part to be just a little bit over. And what you could do is you can hold down, you can just click and drag, and it will do that for you. Now, if you want more fine movements, you hold down Alt, and it takes it off the grid, so you can do that as well. Something else you need to know when doing this is this also has an influence on your samples. You only have so many samples to represent this pitch, and you've resampled it, so it will be on C, but you may get a lot of artifacts, a lot of quantization error, and other various things because you don't have enough samples to represent this note. That's part of the reason why when you pitch stuff up and pitch stuff down, it sounds different. So just so you know, so if we were to, like, let's say we do something outrageous, like we just go over here and we go, whoa, yeah. And let's listen to that. And then we come. You see, we get a lot of artifacts. But if we Control Z it, now to do multiple Control Z's, you hold down Control Alt Z to undo multiple edits. And it's not doing the undo edits in here. Let's try doing the undo. So just so you know, this is an important note. Sometimes NuTone keeps its own separate list of undos, and hitting Control Z triggers the FL Studio undo. So you have to use the undo menu button right here. If your undo, most of the time it works for most edits because it's registered by FL Studio, but some moves are specific to NuTone, so it has its own backup moment here. So now it should sound natural again.
You will subscribe.
And okay, so I've moved notes around and done all sorts of weird junk. So yeah, so that's a thing, just so you know. So you hold down Alt to click and drag and do stuff like that. Now, let's say you want to join two notes. Well, you're making a trade-off. You're making a trade-off here. So first you have to select two notes. So we select, and you hold down Control and drag to select another note. So these two notes are red, and we're going to make them conjoined. Let's say that they missed a note. NuTone has separated these two notes. We want them to be the same. Well, if you do this, they must be the same pitch because they're conjoined on one thing. So you can't like have it. This is the bend that represents the bend between the notes. So what you do is you hold down Shift Alt, and you'll get this arrow, this little pointy arrow. You click it, and it will, boom, it will merge them together. Now, I don't know what the behavior is as far as which one it chooses to merge to which. I think it may be dependent on just which one you click. So let's try selecting these two, and holding Shift Alt. Nope, it doesn't do it. Let's try it on this side, holding Shift Alt. That drags it down. Shift Alt. That drags it up. Okay, so it's which one you click. This is just the first one, so it's a little weird. All right, so that's that. Now, it's important to note that your samples, the amount of samples you have for a given pitch, according to the Nyquist theory, okay, this gets a little technical, but just so you're going to get artifacts when you start moving things around according to this bit depth and quantization error, which is pretty much the same thing, and your sample rate will have to be altered to adjust to this. It may do oversampling for you. I don't know. I don't see an oversampling option in here. So now we're going to move on. So you know how to adjust clips. So you can move that guitar part over just a little bit and it should sound all right. And it will stay in time. So you can move it in time with that and it will be okay. So it just moves those two notes and la-da-da-da-da. So we've talked about center, this variation. So we have all this sort of in between. You can see my voice goes down a little bit right there. It goes up and over and around. If you want a natural sounding vocal, you're going to want to manipulate this with caution. You're not going to want to sacrifice it, make it flat. But you can over exaggerate it, so you can bring it way up. As you can see, we can bring the curves more up. Or you can bring it down and flatten everything out to be perfectly on the pitch.
You will subscribe.
Let me move this.
You will subscribe. Tell it.
I have moved notes all over the place.
You will subscribe to this channel.
So as you see, it sounds quite nice. I happen to like that a lot, but I like keeping some variation in there as well. And there are some advanced edit modes, which we're going to talk about, that allow us to do this. But there's a few other things we need to talk about. So there's this autoplay button, which I talked about in the first. You can enter it by pushing A and not pushing A. Push it again, it will take it out. Autoplay, it's auto scroll feature. So if we're all scrolled in and we're trying to edit this one note, we hit play to listen to see what our edit sounds like. And it goes off screen, it's going to move our screen over. Then we hit not play, we try to go back to the note, it's going to snap back to the very first measure, and then you got to scroll back, and just this whole mess. Watch. We're like, no, oh, and then it just jumped somewhere weird, and now we got to zoom out and kind of look, and it's just a jumbled up mess. I don't like this. This was a big turnoff for me, but it wasn't because this is useful. I'm not saying this isn't useful. I'm saying this has got its appropriate place in time, but when you're editing, just so you know, turn this off and it will not follow the scroll.
You will subscribe.
And so now you can make your edit and be happy and not like freak out because you keep having to do all these additional mouse clicks to get back to the one note, make one change, and then find out that's not the change you wanted. So again, that's A to do that. Now, there are going to be times where you're going to want to cut notes to manipulate pitch more exactly. And so if we cut a note, you can hold down Shift and click to do that without entering cut mode, which is this guy right here. Or you can just hit C, enter cut mode, make your cuts, and then hit C again, and that's great. So obviously I prefer the Shift method because it's faster. My hand's already on the keyboard. I don't have to reach up here and enter and exit cut mode. And to show you something, now we need to get rid of a stigma. Some people, I'm telling you, do not let graphics influence the way you mix. Your ears are for that. So we're going to play note. I'll play it one more time. Get it really good in your head. It's like, oh, okay. So that's what that sounds like. Now let's just chop the freaking crap out of this jazz. And you'll see some notes even move down. That's because it is now recalibrating our jumps. So our graphics are changing. Let's turn our variation up. Our graphics are changing according to the pitch it detects on average. So this is still the same. It'll still sound the same. It just looks a little different. Now let's undo all those edits. Okay, and there's one other thing. This does sound different, but that's because it's literally playing a different note. So if we move that back up there and do the same thing, which this is a nifty way. Sometimes Newtone will miss notes, and you have to cut it and put the notes back in. Sometimes it'll group notes together based on the average because it makes these cuts as it deems this is what they probably want. So sometimes it'll miss notes. Sometimes it'll give you too many notes. And you want to join them like this. You probably just want to join that. And it sounds the same. So Don't let these influence the way your ears work. When you start editing and stuff, then you're making changes and you might start running into differences. So let's just conjoin all these back together, and you hold down Alt, Shift Alt to do that. And you may want that separate note at the beginning so you can manipulate the pitch differently. And we're going to talk about using ramp mode to do that. So, okay, so that is the cut mode. And that's pretty much manipulating these. There's one other thing we need to talk about real fast. We have these transitions. Right now, they are, when transitions all the way up, it is as you sing it, as it detects it. As you move the transitions down, and of course, as you manipulate samples and move them back and forth, this may change things as well. But as you take it down, it'll make it perfectly linear, so up and down. So way more, like so straight that you can't even see it.
You will subscribe to this.
And that's a wrong note.
You will subscribe to this channel.
And that's the really auto-tune thing. It actually kind of works with this vocal, but I'm going to put the variation back in there and take the transition. I normally don't change the transition like that. So this is a good go-between for that option. So that is what these things do. As you can see, you already have the tools to do some pretty powerful edits, but you are now going to have your mind blown. This is where we get nitpicky, and when you're doing serious vocal editing, you're going to want this. So if we zoom in here on a note, and you can just double-click a note, and boom, you've just entered advanced edit mode. Bum, bum, bum. What advanced edit mode? It gives you a bunch of options to specifically manipulate certain things. And I'm going to say that I missed talking about this in the second video because the second time I recorded this, I forgot, but this time I'm going to remember. So we have this bottom represents pitch, and we have these yellow triangles. Let me zoom this up even further. We have these yellow triangles, and these yellow triangles represent the amount these things have control over our piece of audio. So we have this slice, and we can see some of the pitch. It's sort of a transition slice. And let's go to beat 6, a little bit before it.
Will subscribe.
So let's say we want to edit this. This is the pitch ramp in. So as we let's just conjoin these two real fast. Okay. So now, okay, one other thing. When you leave, it's going to go away. And you're going to be like, I'm still in advanced edit mode. Why did it leave? Just hover your mouse over it. Don't be clicking on it, all that stuff. Just wait. It'll pop up really fast. That was something that can throw your workflow off. Just know if you just hover your mouse over it, it'll come back. So we have this pitch ramp. This bottom section is the pitch variation. So we have to transition our pitch from this note to this note. And this controls that ramp. So you can see we are manipulating that line. By adding cuts, we can manipulate this line very specifically. We have a pitch ramp in. So this is the ramp in. And we have a pitch ramp out. Now this controls the variation of the pitch. So as we move this up and down, so we take this down, it's like we're turning the variation down on this knob on this one note. And so we can do that. And it's really great. So obviously I recommend doing this. You see the graphic here looks funky, so your only guide will be your ear. This is a transition where I have that sort of like auto-tune stuff going on.
Will subscribe.
Will scrub. It's like kind of funky sounding. So let's go to a note where pitch is more of a factor. So let's come up here. Subscribe. That looks like a note that, and as you see, our waveform's like blowing up to all weird. You have to exit advanced edit mode. You could just do that by hitting Control E, and you could hold down Alt and scroll, and now we can see our waveform. It's more of a useful guide. Again, we don't want to rely on this too heavily. And so that's that. I shouldn't have clicked that. You double click it, and it will rezoom, and you can edit your note. You click this if you don't want it to do that crazy zoom thing, but it's a more intuitive way I feel of getting to it. So here's our pitch ramp, and as we move it, oh man, you can see the change there.
Will subscribe.
So you could do some pretty cool stuff. So we're gonna take our pitch ramp back. So that's the one in. Here's the one out, and here's the variation control. So we could control that, maybe flatten it out.
Will subscribe.
And that's that. Now we also have this volume. So if you're not familiar with compressors and dynamic processing, you have no business touching those because those are tools that you should learn first by manipulating volume. So if I challenge you to do a mix with just volume and panning. I had to do this at school. It was really quite enlightening. You could spend a long time getting your compressor setting, and then it still may not be just the way you want. There might be moments where you have to compromise, and you could automate that stuff, I suppose. Or you could just automate the volume, and it's the same thing. So in a multi-band, you might automate the volume in the multi-band, but that's something that was really mind-blowing, something I didn't really consider. Well, you could control that here. So you could essentially do your compression in here, be really detailed, and get the smoothest vocal ever. People will be like, what kind of compressor did you use? And be like, I am an artist. I do it all by hand. And some people look at you like you're nuts. And in some cases, you are nuts. Like, that's not necessary. Sometimes a compressor can do that. So as we turn, this is now controlling the volume of the note as we go in and out. We have volume, and we have this triangle right here. As we scroll it, this is actually, you can see the volume changes. So as we do that with the variation, you see variation pops up right here telling us the amount of variation we're allowing in. And this top one controls the volume. And we can move this in and out to control it. So if we take our volume way down and we move it, there's not very much. If we take it way up, these controls are controls that you really hear more than see. Sometimes you see them really clearly. Like if we do something like this, and then move it around, move it back. I had this problem last time too, and then I did it on one, and it was like super clear what it was doing. It's really interesting to see. We're going to affect it at 198%. So let's just give it a listen. Let's have a really slow volume ramp.
Will subscribe.
So you see it's quite soft. Let's turn it up.
Will subscribe.
Turn the volume.
Will subscribe. Will subscribe.
So that's the volume control. You can ramp them in and out. Oftentimes you'll see it working, but you can also just hear it. So that's the variation pitch. That's that. Now you have this thing called formants. So when we talk, there's all these crazy things, and there's plosives. There's the sound for this, and that's the air rushing past your tongue, hitting your teeth to create that sound. There's another sound called now they're the plosives, where they use the lips instead. They're like P and B. Use that. And there's all these other kinds of tones for your throat. And essentially what formants is so your throat and it's just nuts. You're creating all these variations in pitch. I recommend going into my DSP video and looking up the one on formants. And I synthesize it. I show you filter movements and stuff to make it sound like a synth is talking with nothing but an EQ moving around. So that's pretty incredible thing. So what this does is this controls the formants, and you sound like you because of the formants of your voice. You sound different, like a guy sounds different from another guy because of his formants, but a girl sounds like a girl and a guy sounds like a guy for the same reason. And so if we were to change this formant, so you can click and drag, you get a formant shift. You shift it up and it will sound much more feminine.
Will subscribe.
Well, not always, okay? And so you shift it down.
Will subscribe.
If you really want to sell a female vocal type sound, what you do is you shift the formants up and then you shift the note up too. Ideally, you would oversample it as well. And so a lot of that stuff's covered in my DSP series. I talk about formants and stuff like that. And so you can just click and drag to do that. Now let's talk about note selection. So you can select notes. So you select here, and you hold down Control to add note selections. You select those notes. Now, any changes you make, volume, pitch, whatever it is, if you move this, they all move on all those selected notes. So you see this one's moving as well. So we can make formant shifts on specific notes.
Will subscribe to this channel.
You see it only happens on those notes. So you can create some really interesting, I see a huge potential for trap. But I don't know if they use this kind of stuff, but there is definitely some potential here for that kind of a thing. Another thing you need to be aware of is when you do something like this on the formants. Oh, not another thing you need to be aware of. This is a request I have from ImageLine that would just be outrageously cool, is if you could reverse specific slices. Like you just reverse that one slice in Newtone. That would just be so versatile and intuitive and outrageously cool. You could probably come up with some outrageously awesome results. And I want to encourage you at this point, now that you've seen all these, we're not done yet, But now you've seen all these options, I want you to encourage doing some editing in here and then bouncing it and then doing a slightly different edit with different variation in center to create your own custom chorusy type effects, to mix it with another thing, mix it with a vocoded thing maybe. I want to encourage you to try doing this with outrageous edits, maybe reverse, maybe send a reverb in here, a reverb, only reverb take of your vocal, and then new tone that so you could have reverb harmonies. I want you to think about just all the different things you could do. You could put a bass line in here and edit it just perfect, have all the timing. You could use that elastic trick by holding down Alt and moving things ever so slightly. We have a bunch of things selected right now. You just click somewhere else to deselect, and you could do this and make your bass line perfectly in time. Like, I want you to see the possibilities. Like, I just want that to be really clear in your head. All right, so that's that. That is what all this is. Now, there is some more options. So you have this send to playlist mode. I've had one occasion where it would show up where my marker was, and I cannot replicate it for the life of me. But you can select an area, and you can pick the send to playlist button, and bang, it sends it to the playlist at the beginning of your selection. That's what will happen pretty much all the time, except for that one weird case. If you have nothing selected, which I've been having a lot of trouble doing of late, and I don't know why. If I zoom, it seems to deselect. All right, so if you don't have anything selected, it will just put it at the beginning of your track. So wherever the beginning is, including the silence that was in here, which we have deleted, which is you just select something, you hit delete on your keyboard, and it will just go away. So that's the send to playlist. You can drag it out as a file. You could drop it somewhere, and it will pop up there. You can save it, and you have all your options for saving, if that's a thing that's important to you. You could send it to your MIDI. So let's say you've got this the way it is, and you want a synth line to go along perfectly, and you just wish you could bounce this data as a MIDI notes information for like how long. What it will do is it will take each slice and interpret it as a separate MIDI note. So you may, when you're going to do this, you're going to want to conjoin these together. So you may want to open up another new tone with the same vocal and open them and conjoin them so that you can send a MIDI score that will sound like your vocal. Because this will be like don, 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 depending on the synth you're using. And the way you do that is you come over here. It's important to note that if you do not have something selected with this green, it'll go to just the top synth. So you may overwrite stuff in your song, especially on patterns. And you may be doing it unknowingly, and then you're going to introduce things into your song that you didn't anticipate, and you're going to be like, what is going on? That's what happened. So what you do is you can select one. And if you select multiple ones, so if you hold down like shift while you select, it will always go to just the top one. It won't like jump to multiple. So if you select one and you hit send to playlist, which is, or send to score, I believe it is. And I believe they do that because it is the term used in many other DAWs I've discovered. So you hit that and oh, look at that. There's our vocal. And it looks really similar to this. Pretty similar. Let's play it. That doesn't sound that great. Well, we have some issues going on in here as well. So if we fix those issues, it'll sound better. And we want to ideally conjoin things and make it like an ideal synth line. So that's something that might require a little bit of editing. We already talked about the undo function. You have all these selection functions. You could select around selection. I don't know what that does. You can select all time, so just select all your time. Or you can select all the slices. You could just hit Control A to do that. This is something that I always just hit Control or I just drag, and I've never really had to go in here and use some special, like most of this is just select all. And so, yeah, that's a workflow thing. It's never been a big deal to me, so I don't hold it that important. Undo, redo, copy, paste, copy to MIDI clipboard. So you can copy it to the MIDI. So instead of sending it to score, you can save it as a MIDI file and then import it if you want to use it maybe in another DAW or something, because this is a native DAW to FL only. So if you wanted to use this with another DAW, you'd have to use like Rewire or something to run it in FL while it's running as a plugin in like Ableton or Pro Tools or something. We have delete, quantize time. So this will just quantize it. I have no idea what the quantize function is, what it'll snap to. I think it's like 30-second notes, but I don't see an option for it. At least I haven't found one. You hit it, and it will. You can see a few things snap. Let me hit controls. Let's just hit undo. And it's not, sometimes this, I could imagine this being important, especially with a drum loop. But there's that. You have this select, let's go back over here. Quantize time. You have advanced edit, and then you have this advanced edit vibrato mode. You might be like, whoa, there's another advanced edit mode? Yes. So a vibrato is like, you ever hear a flute player play and then they move their pitch up and down? That's called vibrato. If you ever hear them change their volume, so here's I'm going to try and sing a vibrato. So it goes, that's the pitch moving up and down. In Harmor, they actually have a vibrato setting right here. And so if I were to play some notes, that's vibrato. Now tremolo is a modulation of volume, so the volume turns on and off that. So it's not like the vibrato. It goes wah 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 wah. It's sort of like that. I'll turn the speed up. So let's turn the depth all the way up. So you can see it's a very different effect with the pitch vibrato. Usually when a live player does it, it is a variation of both. And so this advanced edit mode, which you can only get to from this menu. I wish there was a hotkey for this, because you automatically are in this mode and you click that and now you're in both, but it will only recognize advanced edit vibrato. So if you're trying to get back to your advanced edit mode, you have to come in here and deselect advanced edit vibrato mode. So this introduces vibrato. So now you can see we have these very different lines. Oops. I want this selected. And let's enter advanced edit vibrato mode. And we have this green line and we have this blue line. With the blue line all the way over, advanced edit vibrato mode is off. It doesn't do anything. When we move it over, oh man, what is that? That is our vibrato. So what note am I on? What measure? 11? Let's go over to 10.
Subscribe.
And this is another case where, now if you're not familiar with sidebands and modulation and all that other high band frequency FM type stuff, this is an FM. Well, it kind of is. It is frequency modulation, I suppose. It creates these sidebands at really high rates. So this looks like it's slow. You might be thinking, oh, blah, 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 but this is actually like mega fast. This is a really high frequency. So if we move it down though, and you can see the frequency right here, like if we move it down, this is going to do it 1.45 times a second.
Subscribe.
And that's not natural. And so that's the frequency. This is a frequency, the rate at which this does this. So it's not only, you can see our pitch information is still in our note. You can see it's not a perfect sine wave. So our pitch information, our variation still plays with this. So you may want to turn your variation down, get your vibrato right, and introduce variation back. You may want to do it just with variation on it. There's a number of ways you could do, but you don't want to fall for the trap of the graphic. You want to listen. And as we move over, we'll get to this point, this green line. This green line is where it deems the natural vibrato is.
Subscribe.
And on a note where a vibrato is supposed to be there, this makes a lot more sense. But it's usually pretty good, and you can move around that. Now, this is useful if you chop it up a bunch to get a specific edit just the way you want. Maybe you want to pitch bend a certain way and the ramps are doing it. You could try using the vibrato tool to get what you want.
Subscribe.
So that's that. I'm going to leave that off. I touch it in the next video. I think. Maybe I don't touch it. I can't remember anymore. So that is advanced edit vibrato mode. Another thing, so we have this vibrato tremolo. So this bottom portion is our pitch variation. So as you can see here, if we click down here, there should be a yellow triangle, but if you click here on the edge, you get that up and down arrow indicator, and you drag, and that controls the variation of our vibrato, which is like super mega important. I almost skipped that.
Subscribe.
And so you can introduce that, and if you were to make cuts and introduce this over time, you can make a really smooth, like a really custom vibrato just the way you want. You know, that kind of a thing. This top one's the tremolo. So this is the volume one, and this is a very visual thing. You can see, bang, like we can see our tremolo. As we move this note, you'll see it also changes. They do not have a separate line for the volume. It would be cool to have a ramp in and out for this as well. That's another request I have. If that'd just be so cool to have that added. Think of like the amazing control you would have over this. I don't think it would be that difficult based on the one I saw from the pitch, but I'm not a coder. So let's listen to this.
Subscribe.
So you can definitely hear that. This top arrow, this top arrow represents, I don't know if that was just changing the graphic or if it was actually changing my note. So again, the dangers of visuals is the importance of listening. If we take this and turn it, we can see, we can also invert it, but you could see the amount of control you have over that.
Subscribe.
So it might not be something desirable, so you like that. Again, it would be cool to have a volume thing. Now, if you chop it up, you could do that. You could do that on your own. It'd just be cool to have pitch ramps because then you wouldn't have to do that. So that is advanced edit vibrato. Hopefully, I'm painting a picture here that you can see how you could use this. Here we have cut mode, and then you have the send to playlist and send to piano roll, the same buttons as over here. And then you have this snap to scale mode. So let's zoom out here. Hold down control, left click, and wham. Like, man, that's so cool. I'm going to leave that there. What the heck? If we turn on snap to scale mode, let's select everything. Now we need to select the scale. So we'll come over here, we'll select the scale. Oh, let's choose A minor, A major. So everything's selected. Nothing changes till you move it, which is why I selected everything. So if we move it, whoops, that I'm still controlling the vibrato. I'm going to leave advanced edit mode. Everything just shifted up to the nearest note in the A major scale.
Subscribe.
That's another thing. If you move this and expect this to move, it won't move. So you'll just get clashing stuff. So you have to manipulate this one in the slave mode playback.
You will subscribe to this channel.
That might be something that's mega useful for you. Like that could be really cool. Just some automatic scale adjustments. And then you have the snap to beat. This controls the grid. So you see we have our grid here and where it snaps. If you change this to like half a beat, it changes. It's pretty much like the grid setting on the playlist. Now you can open up a new one, and this gets rid of all the stuff you were just doing. So be careful in touching this. You can load a sample. You could save a sample from here. Save as a MIDI file again, and you can open it up over here or whatever. You could slave host to playback, which is the same thing as this button. Edit properties allows you to enter a BPM for new tone individually, or you can just hit tempo sync and it will sync up with your tempo. You hit accept to do that. And you have the about. These are the wonderful people responsible for our plugin. And now there's one more mode. This is a big deal. So I'm glad you stuck around to hear this. So that's okay. So if we go over here and we enter, this is time warping mode. So we click that. It's going to say our sample changes. All the changes will be lost. And do you want to save it? I don't want to save it. You may consider saving it. So if you hit play.
Let's
Let's go over here.
You will subscribe to this.
Now, its timing is all over the map and is all weird. That's because of the slice points we have had introduced. It will automatically introduce these on its own according to our density setting. So this is usually used for drum loops. I encourage you to get in this with synth loops and vocal takes though and get some sort of exciting results, but I'm going to go with the typical thing. So I'm going to drag a drum loop in here. And here we have, oh, you know what? This is a good advertising opportunity. I'm going to go to my machine sample pack library in the composing gloves folder. Machines. And I have 110 loops. This one sounds like a chicken. We're going to use the chicken. So here's the chicken. And we notice that there's slice marks in here. Now, some things come with slice marks already in them. If you don't, so this will detect them. If you don't know what slice markers are, it's like it'll automatically recognize these markers where you custom place them. There are a number of ways you can do this. You can open up this loop and like Edison and add markers and then save it as a WAV file. And then you can import it and it will automatically be recognized. Or you can just adjust the density. So if you're not familiar with the concept of a threshold, this is basically a threshold. And I'm going to paint it for you. Imagine there's a green line at the top here. And right now it says, oh, there is no audio reaching the top, so we have no markers. That's what it says. As we move it down, as we turn our density up, it's like this green line moves down. It says, oh, there's audio right here. And so it puts a marker here. It says, oh, I see the audio. You notice it's not right exactly on our transient because it actually peaks later. So you may need to move some of these markers around. And you may not have the option to do that. What you can do is you can double click and you can add a marker. As far as whoops, Control Z that. So you may turn your density off and just add all your own custom markers like that. Or so if we turn our density up, it says, oh, there's stuff. If we move it more, you see that we get more markers because the green line moves down further and it says, oh, there's more audio. As we move it down, we get even more markers. And they're usually pretty intuitive. Now you'll notice that I did not compress this because I left that sort of stuff to the decision of the person who's using it so they can mix it just the way they want. I hate it when I get something that's been edited in a way that I can't undo what they did and there's noise or something weird. So that's what's going on here. And so what you can do now is you can grab one of these markers and you can shift things in time. So it's essentially like Elastic Audio, only more intuitive for like beats and rhythmic lines. Again, experiment with this. So you can move it over and our sample data is being stretched. Let's turn slave mode off. And you can create some really, really nice loops, things that would flow, and it's in time because it's using the sample markers, and you just stretch it to the next occurring sample marker. We can do this. Make this really short. I have reverb on this now all of a sudden. Now it doesn't want to play. Oh, I turned New Tone off. That's why. New Tone must be activated for it to play. Another important note. Yeah, I probably had reverb on the whole time and didn't even realize it. So you can do stuff like that. You can add the markers. You can move them around. You can double click a marker to delete it if you have a marker that you don't like. And that's pretty much what you can do in here. That's what the density is. You'll notice we have no advanced edit mode because we're not pitch correcting. So you can make these, save the changes, then go into pitch edit mode and do things. Again, I wish you could reverse things. Like if you could reverse just that one section. I know you can do it in Edison pretty easy, so you can maybe move from here to Edison. But again, it would just be way cool to have that in here by itself and maybe even have pitch ramps and additional options at the bottom. I feel like there's room for more stuff. So I mean, just be cooler options for editing and creating new creative things. So that's that. That's New Tone. There's one other thing. You have this play stop button, but then you have this loop button. Loop button, when you push it, it will immediately start playing. When you get to the end of your loop, it will loop. You can turn it off while it's playing, but you can never have loop. Well, I guess you can have. If you stop it playing while loop is down, that's the only way you can get it to go when it's off like that. So anyways, yeah, it'll loop through. That's what that does. So if you have any questions, let me know. Drop it in the comments. What do you like to use New Tone for? Your favorite uses? Do you get adventurous with it? If you have a track that features some of the things about New Tone, feel free to share it. But if you don't, if you're just posting crap down there, don't do that. Well, I'm not saying your music's crap. I'm just saying I want relevant things down there. If yeah, subscribe and have a blessed day.
Opposing wolves. Reversing.